Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to the Sunday recap, which is normally my weekly vlog where I talk a little bit about my last week in games, but since this is the last Sunday of the year, I thought I would try and talk a little bit about the game that I've played in the last year. So this is a Sunday recap for 2020, and as always we will start with EVE Online. I would say I've had a pretty good year in EVE Online. I've had a lot of fun, and it's been pretty interesting with the resource crunch, with the whole Triglavian invasion storyline, which I followed mostly on the sideline, and I did just take advantage of some of the super accessible content that these invasions brought with them, like the emerging conduits, running those in my rattlesnake. Very profitable, very nice to do, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty damn cool. And overall, EVE Online has been able to keep my attention for most of the year. And what I like about it is the fact that you can also basically pace yourself depending on your situation. If you want to, take it easy for a couple of weeks, just, find your niche. For me, that's exploration, find your rounds, do the stuff that you enjoy. And if you want to go a little bit more intense, set yourself a goal and go for that goal, which can be anything, right? Wormhole space, mining, building, trading, fighting, joining a corporation, low-sec, pirating. You can do almost anything in EVE Online, and you have the luxury of going at your own pace since the game is not going anywhere. So I'm really positive about EVE Online. I'm looking forward to what CCP has planned for the next year as well. We basically don't know anything. We did learn that there's going to be no FanFest this year, so CCP kind of wanted to be very clear on that. It's probably going to be more streaming efforts. CCP has actually done a decent amount of streaming since the pandemic hit, and it's been overall, I would say, a solid year for EVE Online, without any too major shifts or breaking points or problems or controversies. From time to time that does happen, but this year I think CCP did a pretty damn good job and I've enjoyed it. Also the recurring events, right? Sometimes themed around certain pirate factions, certain holidays, lots of stuff to do, login rewards. I've basically logged in every single day, so I got all of them. A lot of free SP came from all of that. And of course I have to mention at the end of the summer, of course, the fall of Dital, an end of a chapter there as well, where I had all the structures up and running, all the services up and running for the best possible taxes. Quite a few players enjoying that setup, and I hope that I've been able to help some newer players find their way in EVE Online through that Dital setup. But with the resource crunch and the political shifts in nullsec, the whole landscape of EVE Online has changed quite drastically. The whole bloat of structures, which is something that quite a few players actually complained about as well, has been countered by making them a lot more dangerous and expensive to set up. And then of course with the resource crunch, nullsec, lowsec has been organizing themselves. They've been extending their influence into highsec, and that is the reason why Dital fell, why it's been cleaned up. They basically don't want free ports in space that they consider their own, and for Providence it is Dital, the #1 highsec system, the gateway into everything towards Amar itself, and so that's now firmly in the hands of a nullsec entity, and they won't tolerate neutrals really doing their own thing there. So I'm all good with it. We have started a new adventure, a bit more of a nomadic existence in EVE Online, focusing on the Orca, a Gila in there, a couple of other ships, and we'll be looking for our new adventures. Looking forward to what CCP brings next, and who knows what that'll be. So yeah, definitely looking forward to 2021 in EVE Online. Next up, I want to talk a little bit about Path of Exile, a game that has also been able to keep my attention throughout the entire year, just not every single day of the entire year. I basically joined every league that started, and then I would say a couple weeks to upwards to a month, I would say, is the amount of time that I generally spend in a league. Mostly doing softcore trade league stuff, right? Try to just easily build up a character, and I've been having a lot of fun. I still do enjoy Path of Exile. I mostly like going with very passive builds like minions and things like that. Although in one of the leagues, I do still remember that there was a massively overpowered Stormbrand build that you could do that was like focusing on just get as much mana as you can. That was like the best damage multiplier you could get in the game. You could get some crazy numbers out of that, and that was pretty fun to do as well. What has never happened is that I cracked a late game. I managed to get into maps, I managed to master yellow maps, and then I really do hit that roadblock. So final bosses, red maps, things like that are a little bit out of reach, and that is what I would say my problem is with Path of Exile, is that it is very bloated at the moment with all of the previous expansions. There's expansions and leagues. There's so much stuff that I haven't played, that I wasn't there for when it hit the game, that I have no idea as to what the mechanics are, and especially I would say what the possible power boosts are that doing a certain league mechanic can yield you. And as a result, I think that I'm always playing in a little bit of a gimped state. There's definitely a limit to my knowledge in Path of Exile, and we'll see how it evolves, but I'm kind of looking forward to Path of Exile 2, to be honest, to hunt for that real fresh start where you can get in at the ground level and then join all those leagues, but also obtain and maintain all of that knowledge so that you can basically compete with that late game content, which is geared towards people that have that full knowledge and not someone that came into the game like in the later part of it itself. But it's an amazing game. It's definitely a fascinating ARPG to play. And I highly recommend it. Free to play, just download it, keep an eye on the leaks, join in. It's always super busy there. There's quite a lot of hype to be enjoyed there. So it's absolutely a great game. I know that there is something new coming out in January as well, so I kind of look forward to seeing what that's all about. Yeah, just enjoy it for a couple of weeks, and then I'm back to my regular schedules normally. But they're very welcome interludes there for Path of Exile, where I have a lot of fun and I can go decently hardcore. I can easily clock in like 10 hours on a weekend day for the first few weeks there of a league, and just really try to push my character as far as possible. And then eventually I hit that wall, die a couple of times trying red maps, and then I'm like, all right, maybe we try some other characters or we go and do something else. But it is definitely one of the regular games that I play and that I plan to continue to play in 2021 as well. Looking forward to Path of Exile 2. And next on the list is the Elder Scrolls Online. Now, I have to be honest, I had forgotten that I've played the Elder Scrolls Online last year, so it was not a very memorable experience, but I went through all of my Sunday recaps and I came across a little bit of ESO footage. So yeah, I joined in for one of the expansions, but I must say it's not really holding a candle to EVE Online, and at the moment even to the World of Warcraft. I'm having fun in Shadowlands there. ESO is a completely different beast that I do go into from time to time, but I'm really not sure if I'm going to play more Elder Scrolls Online in the future. Perhaps if there's like an interesting looking expansion, I'll buy that and I'll take a look at the game there again. But it's never really been able to hold me or to hook me all too successfully. I don't have any characters at max level or anything like that. I've done a couple of expansions where I just played through the campaign quests, experiencing the world, and it's got that Skyrim Elder Scrollsy vibe going on, which I do like, but it, you know, doesn't obey all of the Elder Scrolls rules enough for me personally to become like a main game or an MMO that I want to be really invested in. What do I mean by that? Well, it would need like full loot. Everything you see is droppable in the single player games, and it obeys those classical MMO rules in the Elder Scrolls Online. It's not a sandbox game where I feel like, you know, there's sandboxy elements to the single player games there. So unfortunately, I would love to see basically more EVE Online aspects in ESO. That would make it a cool and interesting game. This one is just, you know, a little bit hit and miss for me. I like the atmosphere that I'm experiencing when I'm playing ESO, but for the game itself, the gameplay, the progression paths and things like that, man, they don't feel that rewarding for me. So we will see the Elder Scrolls Online. If they come out with something interesting in one of the future expansions, I may look at that again, but for now it's definitely not a priority. Next up, game number 4, maybe a little bit of surprise to a lot of people, but Dota Underlords, actually a game that has held my interest throughout the entire year of 2020. I think here it's the barrier of entry and the fact that it has this knockout mode that's really perfect for me. 15 minutes for a game, 20 minutes if you're winning, so you don't mind the 5 extra minutes since you end up in the top 3 or something like that anyways, and your build, you can try to complete that. I think it's a pretty interesting game. It's built of course on rounds holo chess mechanic, where you just try to find the strongest combination, put that on the board, and then go up against 7 other players in one-on-one matches, round per round. I think it's pretty cool, and on top of that we got a season somewhere in the year that switched it up, different types of heroes, mechanics, and synergies between them. All of that had to be re-explored, and eventually I feel like I've gotten a handle on some of the stronger meta, some of the stronger units, and that for casual knockouts it's pretty fun for me to jump into from time to time, a little bit as a filler game, as something that is there to relax, because you don't have to be too tense or stressful, you don't need to have strong reflexes or anything like that. It's not too intense, you just start up the game, join something, 15 minutes later you've finished your game, and if you want to, there's some like daily challenges to go after that are usually doable in 2 to 3 games. So overall, in less than an hour, you can also feel like, all right, I'm maybe following a progression path or something like that. That's really not my own focus, just having a little bit of super casual fun with Dota Underlords, though, I think is definitely possible, and it's the casual and accessibility, casualness and accessibility of the game, I think, that are front and center. So probably something that I'll jump back into from time to time as well in the next year, seeing if they come out with another league with other heroes and other synergies. Something that I would definitely go back to explore that. Not super important, but like always an option that's always there, which is kind of nice to have. I think when it comes to gaming, everything doesn't have to be a main game or super intense. Moving on, we come across the game Foundation, which is a game that I bought in early access, but it had pretty cool reviews, and I was basically looking for a slightly better graphics and banished feeling, and I do think that Foundation hit that very well. Now, it's not perfect, it's not as sandboxy as Banished can actually be, but it's got enough freeform elements to it with its automatic generation of housing buildings and things like that. It makes for a different feeling of sandboxiness, while you're much more on a track when you have to unlock everything through very specific constructions that you have to make. Once that is done, you can really shape your own city in Foundation the way you want, focusing on like a very cool look or very utilitarian look. It's got very interesting mechanics where you basically paint areas that become areas for housing, areas for fishing, for building certain buildings and all of that stuff, for growing back wood, and reasonably well balanced, I would say. I never had a problem progressing and building up a city the way that I wanted to, but it's like this early access feeling never really got away from it. I did jump in when there was like an update for some of those extra large buildings, monasteries, so that you could then make wine and unlock extra stuff. I'm not sure what the state of Foundation is at the moment, but I'm kind of hoping that at some point there'll be like a massive announcement somewhere of, all right, here we go, we're actually at a finished product, this is the finished state, try and play the game now. I'm not saying that it's not worth it to jump in. I don't regret my purchase of Banished. I would say that if you can pick it up at a discount, it is fun. Banished Foundations, excuse me, it is fun if you're looking for that feeling that you get from building up a town, same way as with Banished, and then just watching it grow, watching your citizens try to follow your orders and build up their own little thing. It is definitely pretty good for that. A pretty relaxing game as well, not super fast or anything like that. Some of the late game stuff I feel is still a little bit annoying, with all of those missions going outside, building militaries. I haven't really explored that too thoroughly, but The city management aspect of it, I think, is pretty fun. There's decent replayability with a couple of different maps and things like that you can try, and overall a pretty solid game that I'm kind of looking forward to revisiting in a completely finished state. But I'm not really sure when that's going to happen, or if that's already happened, and you know, we'll see if we find a time for some more Foundation later in the future. It was worth it. It was definitely fun to play, but it's also not something that I would say is all too high on my radar at the moment. And game number 6 is Planetside 2. So I did download that game and played a little bit more. Now, that was on the previous rig, so perhaps at some point I need to go back and see if I can play Planetside 2 in 4K. It was still definitely a game that's alive. It got this update with these like carriers that big groups or companies, I think they're called in Planetside 2, could build, that could like dominate the battlefield. I went in solo, just, you know, re-exploring the game, trying to see if I could find some fun in there, and you still can, right? You can definitely still just press that join battle or join action button, get teleported to the nearest point of conflict, and just start shooting at the enemy, trying to you know, fight over certain objectives on the map. It's still definitely an interesting experience when it comes to the MMO first-person shooter genre. I don't think there's another game that does what Planetside 2 does. I personally kind of hope that at some point CCP can come out with its own version of Planetside 2. Can you imagine having the Planetside 2 scale of FPS, but then with an EVE Online sandbox economy behind that on the planets in EVE Online? There's such potential for that. I think it's a grand vision. Not sure if that's ever going to happen, but that is personally my dream, and that's kind of also the reason why I jumped into Planetside 2 again, to see, to feel, to experience that potential. If my character, my Capsuleer character, could decide to step out of his spot, get into his dust clone, and battle it out on the planet battlefields that could be imagined in that game. That would be really amazing. But for now we have to do with Planetside 2. It managed to hook me for like a couple of weeks, playing on a daily basis, just, you know, shooting stuff, dying a lot, and trying to get a couple of upgrades going. It's definitely fun, you know, in small doses, just the sheer scale. You're really in that war setting, one of the small foot soldiers with your rifle in hand, going after the enemy, you know, kill or be killed. It's still pretty damn impressive what they've managed to do, but no major hooks, so perhaps at some point I'll look into it again, but for now I'm definitely happy with waiting and seeing what CCP is building, because we do get some tidbits from time to time that's actually an FPS that they're building there as well. They're not giving up on that dream, so it's a wait and see approach when it comes to FPSs. I'm kind of hoping that at some point CCP can announce something really cool for us to play, and my dream would be Planetside 2 with a sandbox economy set in the EVE universe, which can also, you know, I can then use my EVE Online character to jump in there and to go and shoot some bad guys. That would be very, very cool, and that's my dream, you know, to have Planetside 2, but basically in EVE Online. How cool would that be? And next on the list is X4 Foundations, actually a game that I think I've played several times over the last year. It is a pretty amazing game from a technical standpoint. At the launch it had some problems, if I'm not mistaken, with performance and things like that, but overall I still think when it comes to a single player sandbox game, almost nothing is going to beat X4 Foundations. I personally love to play that as a trader miner, just, you know, buy ships, put a pilot in there, tell them to go mine for you, earn those credits, and then just try to buy and build a fleet of some of the biggest ships that you can have, build big stations with their own defenses. All of that is pretty cool. It still runs into typical X4 or X series problems, which is that inevitably at some point, you know, those NPCs that you own are going to start making mistakes. For instance, I made a very nice defensive station right in front of a gate with where the Xenon would constantly come from, and they would just, you know, shoot them down, rack up the kills. It was pretty good, but eventually there was of course an Argon trader that would just, you know, put himself right in front of my guns, and you know, he takes some fire as well. Reputation ruined, a war started, and my game for what I wanted to do was basically ruined. And that's stuff that's inevitably going to happen. It's just the nature of X4 Foundations. You know, you've got some weapon systems that are pretty damn slow and AoE, and then things like that tend to happen. But it's still a pretty damn good game. The bad news is that I would say that Split Vendetta never hooked me, right? It's an expansion, it added split systems, their ships look very cool, but I could never really get into trying to reach that storyline or trying to push for exploring their space more. I was very happy with the headquarters that I got, and trading and being active mostly in Argon, and some other of like the more core systems, and then trying to again control what the Xenon were doing. That's mostly what I've been doing in X4 Foundations, but it's still on my radar for next year as well, because they are planning another expansion which should add the Terran empires, or empire, something like that. I'm not fully up to date on the lore in X, but it's a great game for a sandboxy single player experience. I actually did enjoy all the time that I spent in X4 Foundations, and I did not regret that purchase at all. In fact, even Split Vendetta, while the expansion content itself didn't hook me, it got me back into another game and a fresh start, where I played through X4 Foundations again, having a lot of fun, actually building up my largest fleet of the biggest ships that you can have. Not exactly sure what the class is called at this point, but it was pretty cool then to watch them fight that super big Xenon ship as well. And so overall, I'm still very positive for X4 Foundations. I hope that they can fix some more of the problems, of the technical problems, and that the new expansion can maybe add in some cool stuff for me to actually explore and to look for. I must say though that it is a true sandbox as well, and so you have to set your own goals, your own you know, things that you want to do. You have to discover that for yourself, and for me it's a very difficult barrier to do anything else than build up economically to become like sort of an economic superpower within the game. That's always what tends to drive me, and that's what funnels most of my attention. And once I'm in that funnel, it's very difficult for me to say, okay, you know what, now I'm going to take my time to hunt for some missions to do, so that I can then complete a certain mission quest line or something like that, try and find a story. That tends to be very difficult for me to really access in X4 Foundations, but we will see. It's definitely on the radar, new expansion on the horizon, and that is like 99% sure that it's going to be another jumping point for me to play some more X4 Foundations. And next we have another game that I apparently did play last year, since it was in some of the Sunday recaps, but that I completely forgot about, so apparently didn't manage to hook me too much, and that is Overwatch. I think it's still a pretty solid game, and I just went back in. I think there were like a couple of new heroes and things like that to discover. It's also pretty low barrier of entry, you know, quick rounds in and out is possible. What was noticeable is that I had longer waiting times, which was not really a problem at the beginning, since I still had new classes to discover, new characters to discover, so that immediately put you into this sort of firing range mode, where you could, you know, try out the powers, get a feel of the heroes, and then jump into a game, make your selection, and go into the classical Overwatch experience. But overall, I'm not sure. I kind of get the feeling, I think I did notice that news that like the Overwatch League was then cancelled. Quite a bit of controversy around the esports scene and how much support the game still got from Blizzard, and you know, I couldn't help shake that feeling that maybe, you know, is it still worth it to invest time in the game when Blizzard is not investing more of their time in the game? But that may be completely wrong, because I mean, it's still alive, there's still new heroes that I explored there, and from a technical standpoint, it's still a Blizzard game, so super smooth, super fast, super responsive, so it's a great shooter, but just not the one that I think I want to focus on at the moment. I just went back in for a couple of games. I think played for like 2 or 3 weeks or something like that, a little bit, and yeah, not much more to say about Overwatch. And that's a little bit different for the next game on the list, which is Total War Warhammer 2. That has been a game that has brought me back quite a few times, re-downloading it when new expansions came out, adding cool new options, races, starts and things like that. The Skaven, amazing concept, the dwarves as well. Now you have to combine that with Total War Warhammer 1 in order to get like all of those races unlocked and that different campaign map that you can get there as well. But once that's done, you do get an enormous amount of options, a lot of replayabilities, a huge amount of factions to explore, and I still have a couple of DLC on my wishlist as well, which, you know, if it ever comes on sale, I'll probably grab it and then play some more Total War Warhammer 2. It's another one where the scale is absolutely mesmerizing. You can get armies with hundreds of units on the board duking it out. You can have massive sieges, you've got massive ranged weapons, big melee clashes, super powerful heroes, your own abilities. The campaign map is very, very large, super expansive, but also detailed and beautiful. You're drawn in to that Total War universe. You've got all the bad guys, you know, the Skaven. Honestly, I kinda love to crush them. They're okay to play, they're not exactly my play style, but they're definitely okay to play as well. But to crush them, they're very annoying from time to time as well. They can make big comebacks with unexpected armies and things like that. And I mostly tend to play Total War Warhammer 2 for a full domination, right? Just try to conquer as much as possible. The Lizardmen, those have been super fun to play. The Dwarves, absolutely enjoy them. You know, if you love turtling, there's almost no better race than that with their cannons and things like that. You know, you can just let the enemy come and just bombard them to bits before they even reach your line, which is then quite strong and sturdy as well. Kind of like the elves too, with their ranged advantages with bowmen and things like that. So overall, this is really an amazing strategy game, turn-based on the map. But then once you get into those battles, you can get some pretty damn amazing graphics and things like that. It's quite demanding on your PC, gotta be honest on that. Not always the best performer, but generally speaking, I think that it's pretty stable at this point. And there's some unintuitiveness when it comes to the DLC. I'm not exactly sure how it always works with Steam and things like that, but it's just the sheer amount of content that it has straight out of the box without all the DLC is quite amazing. And I haven't found a single bit of DLC myself that that I feel like wasn't worth it. So overall, Total War Warhammer 2 is one that I may revisit when the sales come out at the right time for some of the DLC that I'm still missing. There's definitely some cool stuff that I still want to explore myself as well. And this brings me to the 10th and final game, which I'm currently combining with EVE Online, and that's another MMO, the World of Warcraft. I went back to the game with the launch of the Shadowlands expansion, and I have to be honest, maybe a little bit annoying or disappointing for some of you guys that just love EVE Online so much, but I'm having fun with the World of Warcraft Shadowlands. I have a character that I'm able to play pretty casually, but I've got some very nice improvement tracks that I've been doing, and for now I've really been able to enjoy the game in a pretty casual way, finding some daily and some weekly routines to do, but there is definitely a lot less bloat, I'm going to say, a lot less busy work in the Shadowlands, and so far I'm definitely enjoying it. So first thing that's super accessible is basically gearing up with PvP gear. You can just get honor gear, and then with more honor points you can upgrade that to epic level item level 184. You can also add in conquest points, which you earn just by doing battlegrounds, by winning battlegrounds I should say as well, but that's a natural process. I have found that reaching the cap has been super easy. Mostly in the first 3 to 4 days I'm easily capped out on conquest, which gives you access to 200 item level gear, which is not great, but it's definitely respectable for the effort that you're putting in. And then next to that, I'm doing some extra mechanics that you know, are part of the long-term story progression, like your Covenant, the Maw, and then Torghast for your legendary. Kind of like the accessibility there as well. I love my legendary that I already have, which is Corruption, does extra damage and slows the target. Super handy in PvP. Must be very annoying for the opponents in some of those bigger battlegrounds, because you know, when we're chasing down a group, I just, oh, you've got Corruption, and then we grab him and I can see him getting swallowed by the horde. It's pretty damn cool to have this slow being like this baseline instant dot that you put on any enemy anyways. So super powerful, and I can, with really minimal effort in Torghast, keep upgrading that, and I think in 2 weeks, maybe next week, in 2 weeks definitely, I'll be able to upgrade that to its highest item level. And after that I can just casually keep doing some Torghast to perhaps try and look into a second legendary. Covenants, super easy, basically on reset day, and then the day after that I got 1000 anima earned. I'm at the max level there pretty easily as well, which opens up your conduits, which you can pretty easily get from all types of content as well. So yeah, very fun expansion here so far, very accessible, not requiring incredible or outlandish amounts of time for you to feel like you're making progress, and you're still somewhat competing. In fact, when I join random BGs, I must say that I feel like I'm like in top half of players when it comes to gear and things like that, and that with decently low amounts of effort, being able to combine my World of Warcraft Shadowlands experience with EVE Online as well, which is very important to me. EVE is my main game, will probably always be my main game, something that I've been playing for so long, and you know, where I can very easily pace myself. That's not always easy with other games. And yeah, in BFA there was a lot of busy work, Azerite stuff, Azerite grinds that I just didn't feel like doing. But here in the Shadowlands, I really feel like I've got a handle on the content, on the routines that I need to do, and I'm actually enjoying them as well, which is pretty damn important, of course. So that was it, the 10 games that I've played in 2020. Yeah, all that's left for me to do is to wish you guys the best for 2021. I'll keep you guys up to date. I'll keep making videos. Super fun hobby for me. Thank you very much for all of your support, and as always, I'll see you next time.